Yes.
And this is a walk in the woods at midnight where we like to find films that are currently on platforms that you guys may have, like things like Netflix, Hulu, maybe Amazon Prime, that you can see in the comfort of your own home. These are not necessarily new releases. These are things that you may or may not have already seen. And if you haven't, then we hope you'll check them out. We think we have a really good one this week. This week we watched, Jess, do you want to say?
The Endless.
The Endless, yes. So this is a film that was, I have my notes. I'm just going to flip to them really quickly.
Okay.
So it was released in 2018. So it's a fairly new film. And it was directed by Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson. And these guys, I think they are just, they starred in this film. They directed the film. One of them wrote the film and one was the cinematographer for the film. And it was just, I don't know how you felt about this, but I thought like the cinematography, like the landscape was kind of like a character unto itself.
Right.
That's
a good point.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was super impressed. I think I can outline the plot really quick. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is I looked it up on IMDb because I saw the credits at the very end and I wanted to double check to see that the directors, that the guys who acted in it did everything. And I saw that it was filmed on a micro budget. And
yes.
So I think they did really well for a micro budget. I thought it was really well done for a micro budget.
It was. I mean, I think that, certainly they were limited. And so they did a lot of these shots, I guess, with like, there were some really impressive shots where there were like these giant statues and, like in the desert and like mirroring effects done. And they had to do those all like with what they had. Like there's no CGI. That wasn't affordable. So this is like nitty gritty. Like they made this stuff. Those statues, I guess, were tiny miniatures. I don't know if you remember those from later in the film.
Oh, they were?
Yes.
This is why I love your analysis, because I learned things from you that I didn't even know. That's interesting.
I thought that was amazing. And so I guess maybe should we go ahead and
go ahead
run through it really quickly?
Do that. You're good at that.
Okay. Well, a lot of it I steal, I have to say, from like different sources. So
that's
just
fine.
a plot outline, because it makes it way easier than what I would describe.
Sure. Yeah.
This one. Yeah. This one was really involved. And anyway, so before we really talk about the content of the film, we'll talk about the plot. It's basically about these two brothers who are living they've escaped a UFO death cult, or so they say, especially the older brother. So the two brothers. So the older brother had escaped from this UFO death cult with the younger brother. While the younger brother was still pretty small, I think. I want to say maybe like he was 11 or something when he left with the older brother. And so we don't start at this death cult. We start with them doing a menial job. They're cleaning. They're just having a terrible life. They're this close from like, just being out on the street. They're having a tough time in life. And so the younger brother decides to ask the older brother, who still acts very much like, I would say very much, this is very much like a father and son situation. But the younger brother asked the older brother if they can go back to this, death cult to see if they're still there. And, because they receive a tape in the mail with no explanation from this cult. So we think.
Because the younger brother has nothing but good memories. They're eating top ramen as adults, but he remembers meat and vegetables and love and attention.
Yes,
and
exactly.
they're scraping by at the bottom of the barrel as adults.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So they're hoping to, at least the younger brother, the older brother's cautious, but the younger brother is all in. The older brother's like, all right, we can go. But then basically, like, I don't want to hear about this anymore. And then when they get to this cult, they find that, not only are these people still here, but they are incredible. They look the same way they did when the brothers left. Everyone is super healthy. Everyone is, it's sort of like a paradise of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And so the that's sort of the plot. And then without, I mean, I don't know how much more we can really say just because it will
Well,
start to get into spoilers, I think.
yeah, and when the boys left, it was an
Mhm.
escape from a death cult. It got a lot of publicity that
Oh,
they
yeah.
escaped from a death cult, and now they're returning. And you'd think there would be a lot of hard feelings because they described it as uh, kind of a suicide death cult where they were going to get taken up into the sky, and they escaped barely. And so now they're back to visit, and that's why the older brother's so worried about it. But they were welcomed back with open arms and saying,
Mhm.
we forgive you, everything's cool. Here's a beer that we brew ourselves. Just
Mhm.
relax, have a meal. And um, I will say that the first 20 minutes of this film, I, I was wondering, okay, Jenny, when do we get to the scary bit? I mean,
Yeah.
this is not I this is definitely not one of our typical movies beginnings,
Mhm.
where the house is haunted from the very beginning. But I also will say this is the first movie where I couldn't wait to see what the ending was going to be.
Yeah.
Getting into like the last 15 minutes, I was like, oh my God, what is this ending going to be? I cannot wait. Because usually in other movies, I don't know what the ending is going to be. In all the movies we've reviewed, I don't know what the ending is going to be. And that's why it's such a surprise. I mean, this ending was a surprise, but I mean, I don't see the ending coming, but I knew there was going to be some kind of resolution, and I just couldn't figure out what it was going to be. And I was just excited for the ending like I haven't been in any of these other movies.
Yeah, it was a very interesting movie. I think, it could be categorized in lots of different ways. I think, horror, there's a kind of this definitely highlights a kind of a sense of like existential horror, I
Mm-hmm.
think, like where are we? What is free will? What is paradise? Is everything a trap? It definitely raises ideas about all of this stuff because and I guess I'm going to just start to, maybe I just am going to start to kind of talk about it a little bit with a little bit more meat on it. So if you haven't seen this movie, then probably you shouldn't be watching our channel in the first place.
But since this
But
is such a small movie with a micro budget, I have a feeling that a lot of people didn't get to see it.
that's
So
true.
so we're gonna probably go into spoilers, but I feel like Jenny and I both feel like you definitely should see it. It
Yeah.
it's got a lot of I, I didn't consider it real. Well, it's got existential horror, and it's got a lot of scary moments. It's more frightening than
Hmm.
anything. I consider it, it's not a lot of blood and gore, but it's got a lot of terrifying moments in it that I think we usually save this for the end, but since it's such a small movie that it's not like The Conjuring where everybody's heard of it.
Hmm.
I would urge everyone, excuse me, to see it because we're
Yes.
going to start spoiling it, and I don't want people to tune out and just say, oh, I'm not going to see it, but I would urge everyone to see it because it's really well done. I think it is.
It's a film that is, I think, really special. And it definitely it raises really, really big questions about just how we think about life and death and God and, you know, no God, and all of these different permutations of how we've always conceived of life. So official
Right.
review part of this, yes, go see it. It's so good. Um,
And it goes back to what I said last week about these movies now are more than just scary vampires killing people and that's it, but it has lots of layers in it about things about life and things about life and death and the meaning of life and the living of life and things, and there's lots of layers to these movies that we're
mhm.
seeing, which is really a fun surprise for me about, as you say, what you just said about the movie.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so I mean, and just to dig in a little bit more to give our conversation a little bit of a frame, maybe a little bit of a framework, we can talk about a little bit about how these guys started out in this really kind of crappy place. They go to this camp, right? The older brother is very unsure of kind of what's going on. He's not he hasn't bought into this. He's still thinking something's wrong. Um, what starts to get scary, I think, the younger brother jumps in with both feet, like we said. What's scary about this, I think, is that there are definitely things that we can't really explain. I mean, you go into it and you go, oh, here's another cult horror movie, horror movie about cults and brainwash. No, it like, I love how it sort of takes us by the hand in this direction that we think we're going, and then it just blows up. So I think things started to get weird for me around the time of, I guess the first thing was the first thing the magician. They were talking at the table when they were at the camp. They went inside, had like this amazing meal, went out. They were talking about how, that thing about you need 10,000 hours
Oh,
or
and he said a
something to do
million
X.
hours.
Yes. And he said, God, I need a million hours to get this good, whatever. And so then you see, in fact, that when he does a specific magic trick where he throws the baseball up in the air and it hangs in the air
Mm-hmm.
for, like, and I mean, the way that scene is shot, I think, is really cool. It's a perspective from above. It was really well done. So you get to see this guy actually legit is a magician who has probably already logged a million hours or whatever he needs. So you start to realize that this place is different from what a normal place on earth might be.
See, I didn't pick up on it until I don't pick up on things as early as you do in these movies. I picked up on that. Um, I don't think I picked up on it and on the fact that things were different until much later.
What about, like, so there was, I think the second thing that I saw was really like this, like when they were playing tug of war. This is like a kind of
Oh
thing that
yeah,
they
that
do
was
every
weird.
night. Yes, that was weird. There was so that basically was um a rope going up into the sky. Um, and the older brother explained it by, oh, somebody's on a ladder in the tree, like, because it's black. You just can't see what's in front of you. So the rope is coming out of this darkness, and they try to win the tug of war. And the younger brother does it. The older
Wins the
brother,
tug of war. Yeah,
yes, and the older brother does not win the tug of war. It is yanked out from his hands. So
and the guy
that's,
that's supposedly up on the ladder, he turns around and there's the guy that's supposedly up on the ladder,
yes, yes.
and he's got these severe rope burns where
Yeah.
it's yanked out of his hand.
So this is like where it's starting, like, like you're starting to see these things that are really not within the laws of nature happening. And so I think that another thing I was going to mention that I noticed, and probably this you noticed this too, is the recurrence of the song House of the Rising Sun.
Yeah, I did notice they kept I did not care for the version that they were singing, but I did
Yeah, that
notice
was
that
the
they did
folk
keep.
version, I
Yeah,
think.
right. That
Yeah.
I know that it was originally like a blues version that was like I don't know when it was written. I should look that up. I should
It
ask
was written
Siri.
back in
Oh,
England, actually. I
oh, it
do
was.
want to know this. So
I
it
want to
was,
ask Siri and see what she said.
go ask Siri and
Because she's
see.
so stupid, and I don't can't believe I pay for this. Hey Siri, when was House of the Rising Sun written?
The House of the Rising Sun was published January 1st, 1983.
No, it wasn't.
What? In,
1983. It was recorded in
incorrect.
64 by freaking Eric Burden. See, Siri is stupid.
Hang on. Let me just tell you, because history
I hate
of House
Siri.
of the Rising Sun. I believe that based on, because I did dig into this a little bit,
Okay,
because it was in the movie.
several
God,
times.
yeah, several times. So it is, first of all, as everyone knows, House of the Rising Sun is a synonym for a brothel,
Right.
and it was very big in the blues scene. But what I was under the impression that Complete History of the House of the Rising Sun, a 500-year journey that has captivated audience every century since the days of Shakespeare.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's apparent, allegedly, I don't know. I mean,
Well, that's
based on
better
what
than
I've seen,
Siri. I'll take yours over Siri's.
yeah, and it was originally I encourage it. I'm the new Siri.
You're the new
I'm a
Siri.
human too.
Hey Jenny, when was House of the Rising Sun written?
500 years ago.
Okay, I
Um,
accept.
but I think it was a folk song that was originally from the woman's point of view, about how she was telling someone, her mother, something about the fact that her younger sister should not follow in her
Mm,
sinful footsteps of
mm,
becoming a
mm-hmm,
becoming a whore or whatever.
mm-hmm,
So, but then over the years, it turned into something from the male point of view,
mm-hmm.
where it was something like my daddy was a gambler, and whatever, and now I tried to get away from that life, but I'm following directly in his footsteps, and now I'm going back to New Orleans, which is was the den of iniquity. And
Right.
so yeah, so I mean, to me, that talks a lot about cycles. So cycles that would allow for
Oh,
people to have a million hours to become amazing at something. Like, you can even see the beer, which is something that they export, that they're able to get money for. So it's like it's something that they can trade to stay surviving and to be able to become amazing at everything,
right.
in this Garden of Eden-ish kind of place. You can tell that the older man who brews the beer, it's like, it's amazing, and all these people want it, and he sort of is just like, he drinks some of it. You can tell at a couple of points, like, he drinks some of it and he's like, ugh, like, this is not as good as
Hmm.
it could be, or whatever. So it's interesting that uh we wonder how long these people have been in this particular cycle.
Okay, now at this point I had not questioned it.
Okay, okay. Well, I only noticed some of that afterward, because I was like, huh? Like, I just held it in my head like that, because it was so strange, because it was like, oh my God, this beer or whatever is the elixir of the gods, kind of, it's how everyone was
Right,
treating it. So for this guy, who I think is the one who is the brewer of this, and this is where all of his time is spent developing his skill. They said everyone has a thing,
right. Or a couple things.
or a couple of things. Yeah. And
But
so,
let me just ask you, we never did figure out who sent the tape to the brothers, did we?
The only thing I can figure, because we see this as the film starts to move forward and we see, certain things happening that are really weird. So,
Yeah.
we see basically the older brothers kind of looking for answers for some of these weird things that are going on. And they kind of refer to this greater being in some way. Like the one guy who is sort of the de facto leader of the
Yeah.
cult, I think. He does math. And so that is sort of like he's always trying to solve this puzzle of what that thing, what that being is or represents. And then same with the young woman. I think that's ultimately what all of those people are kind of getting to. The young woman who was like escaped like from the mental institution or hospital or whatever. She was an artist, and so she would see she sort of would create pictures or charcoal drawings of what the being was to her.
Mhm.
And you get the sense that there is this being. I mean, there are certain things that keep happening that are unexplainable. And really, I think legit, there was this kind of power in the sky. Like, I think that was what was going on. And I think that it starts to dawn on you as like, or at least for me, like when the older brother went out for a jog, and he was kind of still just looking askance at everything. And this being is kind of getting pissed off because the brother isn't aware of it or doesn't want to be aware of it or think, whatever he thinks. But he ends up at an area, at a clearing where there's like this huge, I think it's like a wind blast. And then all of a sudden, all of these photographs are fanned out in a circle around him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's, at least for me, that was one of the first things when I started to be like, okay, this being is watching everything they do. And I think the being was the one who sent the video to them to get them there at this time of, the three suns in the sky set, or the three moons or whatever coming together. Yeah. So that's what I think. And then I'm going to just split off into another curly Q here and say that I think that the being in the sky, and this is just one little piece of like what I think, that's us. I think that is the audience. We are watching these characters, everything they do for our entertainment purely. They're trapped in a cycle. For them, I mean, theirs is just 10 years. For us, these characters, every time we watch the movie, it's a 2-hour cycle, right? So there was a little bit of that happening. I don't know. Somebody else can run with that and see what else they come up with. But that was something that sort of occurred to me. But I think I think that what ended up happening, at least for me, was things started to get more and more concrete, and weirder and weirder at the same time. And it sort of was like, okay, here are these bubbles where cycles happen over and over.
Right. And it contained my favorite thing, something you couldn't see.
Yes.
You couldn't see the entity, and you couldn't see what was happening. Things were happening, but you couldn't see them happening. And that's what I love. And of course, I guess that's how you make a micro budget movie with something you can't see.
Yeah, that was definitely like that was a really smart move, I think. And yeah, I mean, and I think something else, I think there's this idea of, when those guys are walking, or when the older brother, I think, is walking in the woods, we see these two guys, one of whom is like the de facto leader of the cult. But this same guy, is trapped in a house with his friend who he's trying to wean off of drugs. Do you remember this part?
Yeah, that was towards the end of the movie when the older brother had already seen the guy who gave him a map to
Mhm.
find
Shitty Carl. That's that guy's name.
he gave him a map to find the meth head tweaker guy because
Mhm.
he wanted a gun, right?
Mhm. That's
And
right.
that's when he, to me, that wasn't the climax of the movie, but that's when the movie got way interesting.
Yes.
Was when we figured out that there were pockets of time loops all over the place in this desert,
Yeah.
and this guy, his older brother's car wouldn't start. He got in a fight with the cult leader and said, "Okay, I'm out of here, little brother. Fine, you can stay. I'm leaving. Car won't stay." He ran into the walking man. This guy just walks like a madman back and forth, and he finally finds the guy's house as he's trying to get out, the older brother, and the
Mhm.
guy's hanging by a rope, and all of a sudden he shows up. He's hanging by a rope and he shows up, and that's that is when I finally figured out that there was a series of bubbles that everybody was trapped in a time loop of different lengths,
Yeah.
which
Yes.
I had not figured out that um, those commune or cult leaders had stayed the same age because it wasn't that they were living in paradise; it's that they had been living in the time loop over
Oh,
and over.
yeah, theirs was 10 years, and then Shitty Carl's was like I
Like,
just love that name so much. It's like his was like a couple hours or days,
yeah, his was pretty short.
and then there was the guy in the tent who was probably from what, the maybe the 1920s or something.
His was
His
just
time loop,
seconds.
seconds, over and over and over, and you see him ending his life over and over and over, and so you start to really kind of go, well, wait a minute. So there are different, I don't like, it was kind of amazing to me that, you see this cult where people are in various stages of being accepting of their fate, or um making the most of it, being excited about it, living this 10-year loop over and over again. But then you see some of them who may or may not have been there a little longer than others, who are kind of like fed up. They're done. They feel like I know everything that's going to happen. Like, what, who cares? And I think, and then I think at the same time there seem to be doubles of some people, right? Like the leader of the cult was not only in the 10-year bubble, he was also in this bubble in this house with his buddy who he's trying to get off of drugs.
Oh no, that was Mike, the woman who was crying.
That was Jennifer, his wife.
Yeah, the woman who was crying. She came to look for Mike, and Mike was trying to help get a meth head tweaker guy off of drugs. He was the
Right.
guy that disappeared that the girl came to look for.
Are you sure it wasn't the
Positive.
same guy?
Yeah, I just finished the movie 10 minutes ago. I'm positive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, because that
cult
would
leader
make a
guy only appeared
huge.
as cult leader guy. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because that would have been my theory then, would have been that maybe those two guys are stuck, maybe our brothers who we're with are also existing in their kind of version of paradise and then hell, which is their everyday.
Oh, that would have been interesting.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I uh I just finished watching it. I ran things a little too close to the to the deadline here. And yeah, no, Mike was Mike had been there about a year trying to help his meth head buddy get off of meth.
Hmm.
And uh so yeah, and that was um and I thought one of the funniest things was Shitty Carl sent the older brother with a map to go find meth head in exchange for a gun.
Yes.
And so he got the gun, the older brother did,
Yeah.
but lost his map in the fire that the
Mike.
tweaker meth head and Mike set on themselves to try and end their loop. They
Yes.
were in another loop, which didn't work because as soon as the map and the house went up in flames, it started all over again. The older brother just sat there and watched the house go up in flames, and their little scene started over right away again.
Right.
Where he's like, "Hey, don't shoot. I'm here to help you." And he's like, "Hey, Mike, what's going on, buddy?"
Yes. Yeah, it just goes from the fire back
Yeah.
to that first
And
scene.
and then my favorite moment was when the brothers finally find their way back to Shitty Carl's, put the gun down to get the map back to the commune, and Shitty Carl's all excited because now he has a new way to kill himself, and he it moves the camera moves away so you don't have to see it, and he
Mhm.
shoots himself, and you see the blood splatter, and he goes, "God damn it!" because it didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hilarious because these are it's hilarious and at the same time so sad because
Oh
you
yeah,
see these people who are just they're so stuck in a rut that they'll do anything to try to regain control of their lives, and they literally can't. Like even when they try to get ahead of this being who sort of like is looking into all of these bubbles for its own entertainment, which may or may not be us. You know, they're just that's their fate. They will, you know, they'll try to change it, but they always end up the same.
and I didn't. I wasn't quite sure. All of them said that they encountered in the 3 or 4 different time loops, except for
Yeah.
well, even the commune. The bearded guy said to the younger guy, don't do it if you don't want to,
Yeah.
at some point late in the movie. But they all said, fight it. Don't go down without a fight.
Yes.
The ones stuck in the time loop. So I'm still wondering what the being got out of sticking these people in a time loop. Other than the fact that I thought it was fascinating and an interesting part of the movie, what was the benefit to the being to stick them in the time loops?
I mean, they reference it several times, and the at least the characters in the movie say that it's for this being's entertainment. It
Oh,
likes
it is.
to,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's sort of, I mean, you know, not to get incredibly like way too deep here into this, but it
Go
does
deep.
sort of, let's go
Go
deep.
deep.
It
Deep.
raises like certain ideas about God and why would God, you know, bother to create people and what, you know, and I think that at different when different things are happening in people's lives, they sort of interpret what's going on very differently.
Mm.
And I think that some people see this being as really cruel. I think that some people see this being as so generous. It lets them live forever, you know, and they're able to do whatever they want. Um, you know, I think some people are angry at this thing in the sky. So I think that there are a lot of different interpretations, but
Mm.
that's how it
Okay.
felt to me.
Okay, good. Good. Well, I know the people back at the camp have the better time loop.
They have the better time loop.
They have
Yeah,
the best time loop.
they do, but they're still stuck in one. And
Yeah.
it almost like to me, one of the things that I thought about really with that was like, oh my God, these poor people can never die. And I thought, how weird of me to think that because that's, you know, the thing that people are most scared of, I think,
Right.
overall in life is dying. And what do you know, what happens after life? And maybe that's what happens. I don't know, but it feels like, God, a good long nap in the ground seems amazing compared to doing that over and over and over again. I don't know, maybe that's just me.
No, I agree. Look at our fascination with horror movies.
Yeah.
Nobody walks through the park picking daisies for 90 minutes in the movies we watch.
No, no, and the reason we watch them, I think, is I hope is like because we learn something about ourselves and our fellow humans. At least I feel like that's what makes something a good movie to me is it gets me to think about how I'm interpreting my surroundings and what's happening and how to kind of have some insight into um, other people's lives, but in a way that's meaningful, in a way that gives me a new perspective, I'll say, on
Oh,
something.
wow. You are so deep. I just want to be scared.
Don't get me wrong. I want to be scared too. I mean, because a lot of this stuff is scary. Like when we get into some of those messy emotions, there's nothing scarier than that. There's nothing
Yeah.
scarier than what goes on in our heads.
Yeah. Well, that is a very good point.
Thank
That is
you.
a good point. That is
um,
an extremely good point.
so I don't know. I mean, we've definitely, I don't know if we've quite done the film justice really and how we've talked about it, but it is so conceptual. And I think it is so dependent on what we think of the universe, kind of, that it's going to have a million interpretations. I hope that we went through some of the mechanical sort of basics of it in a few theories.
Well, there's
But
also the brothers, the tension between the brothers, how the younger brother doesn't feel respected by the other older brother
oh
at
yes,
all.
yeah, that's
The younger brother just says, "I'm staying. I don't care. I'd rather." In the end of the movie, I'd rather live forever, 10 years at a time here, uh, than listen to you and the fucked up life that you've given me. Excuse my language.
yeah,
Uh, the life that you've given me on the outside. I choose this. And the older
yeah,
brother goes, okay, here are the directions back to the camp. Let's go. And so they go back. The three moons appear in the sky. They miss the ascension, which they see happening.
hmm
The people disappear into the sky, actually. Um, and we see one cool thing was the padlock door, which has this giant padlock from like 1930 on it,
hmm
is finally removed, and they can go in and they see tapes made, reel to reel tapes or whatever, from like even the 40s or however
hmm
back as far as you can go. So they've been making tapes and tapes and tapes with an old TV of, uh, I guess, of these people have been there for a long, long time.
yeah,
And they turn around and the ascensions happened, and they go sit down, and the younger brother's distraught, and the older brother says, they'll be back. I will wait for you. I will stay here with you.
yeah,
And the younger brother goes, really? Well, that's all I cared about. You respect my decision? And he goes, yeah, I respect your decision. We'll stay here. And he goes, well, that's all I've ever cared about. Let's get the hell out of here then. And so
yeah, yes,
the whole thing starts blowing up, and they're running to their car, the dead battery, and that's all he cared about was getting the respect of his older brother.
yes. And so at the end, when they're speeding, because it's like a very dramatic part of the movie when, they're driving out of the camp, pursued by this giant storm, which is this being trying to get them to
Mm-hmm.
suck them into this bubble. I mean, you see the car, you see the end of the bubble, like only because birds are flying into it and dropping. So there's
Right.
like and then so it's this membrane, and they drive through it. And it's kind of amazing because the ascension has always already happened.
Right.
So they have escaped. And it's, I think, as you said, the reason is because he he confronted, he basically, he broke the rut.
Mhm.
He broke the rut, and so he broke the cycle by giving his brother this respect, and had really never given him. So they were able to get out of that bubble. Now, did they go into another bubble? I think maybe. And
Uh,
here's why. Go ahead.
I no, I loved the ambiguity at the very, very end
Mhm.
as they're driving away, and then go ahead.
Oh, yeah. And so basically, when they get to the other side, they see, and this is a repeat from them, going, driving to the camp. When they're leaving that camp bubble, we see at the exact same spot where they had stopped their mom's grave with this drawing that they had made. And in the beginning of the film, it was perfectly preserved in a desert where
Yeah,
really this thing would have been completely bleached out. You wouldn't have even been able to see the little drawing on it that the
yeah,
boys had done when they were little for the mom. And when they exit the bubble, it's the same thing. And I feel like it's a reminder that, yes, you've escaped the bubble because you've broken this rut, but like you're still in a bubble. And I don't know if because they've confronted this being, if you can't, if now they'll be able to travel through bubbles. Is everything a bubble? Are we, do we set up our own bubbles by our own behavior? Like, I thought about a little bit about like my relationship with my family, and we make the same mistakes and act the same way over and over and over again. And it's like it never goes well because we're so used to dancing this dance that we all become who we were when we were like, 16, my sister and I again, so it's really tough to break out of that. And
mm,
both people need to be willing to do it. And if you can't get out of that trap, you can get out of it, but a lot of us don't think we can. And so I thought that was another really interesting piece of the movie that ended up coming out too. There were so many things.
yeah.
Was that what you were going to say? I don't know if I took it from you.
No. You're so good at analyzing these movies. No, that's not what I was going to say, but it's brilliant, I think.
And I think that's right. I mean, please, everyone, feel free to challenge me in the comments if you think so. I'm wide open to knowing.
No, I thought that was a great analysis. I was just going to say these. You see the people patting themselves on the back at the very end, to give the boys a send off and returning to the commune. They did return and they're walking back, and I was sort of ambiguous, like, so they did come back, and just as the brother said, but they broke free because of the kid broke the cycle and said all I wanted was your respect. And I just liked how ambiguous it sort of was. That did they actually leave? Did they ascend? And was the cycle broken and they came back, or what happened? And I sort of like that ambiguity. But as far as family goes, I thought your analysis was much better than what I came up with, which was just that they came back.
Right, right. No, yeah. I mean, it's it's such a it's such a rich film that I think
Yeah.
there are so many things that I mean, if we had an additional week even to think about it, we'd probably have 9 million things, and we've already been on the air for 43 minutes, and I think it would be hours and hours long, much to, I know, of our viewers' chagrin, but it would be like, there's so much that you can think about with this movie. Like, is paradise really paradise if you don't have free will? Is hell really hell? How bad is bad? Like, what, so all of these different ideas and theories come together. And one other thing I wanted to mention is that these guys, these directors, one who wrote cinema and one who did the cinematography, and they both directed and starred in this, they created an earlier film that was about Mike and the tweaker
Oh,
in that house, and a crazy like force above. So people are really hoping. I mean, these guys I think are going to be so big, and I think they're already starting to become bigger. So of course I'm going to go back and watch that movie. But I think they're going to be, people, I think they really plan to make another film that is another part of this kind of universe that they've created.
oh, nice. That
So
sounds
I'm
cool.
so excited, and I may even have to pay like $3 to, rent the first
Oh,
film that they
don't tell
make.
your
I'm
husband.
not going to tell my husband. He'll see it though. We
He'll see the
everything.
bill.
Yes. Too bad, because I got to see that now.
All right. So we both give it glowing reviews.
Yes.
And you need to see this movie.
You do. You need to go. You need to see this movie.
Excellent. Okay. So we give it both thumbs up. We both loved it. And we hope you have enjoyed A Walk in the Dark. Wait, what's the name of this again?
Walk in the Woods at Midnight.
I named this thing and I can't remember the name of it. So thank you for tuning in. We both appreciate it. Please subscribe to OmniDog's Vault. Feel free to leave a comment, hit the thumbs up button, and subscribe if you like. Hit the notification bell so you always know when we're on the air. And as usual, peace and love, peace and love. Thank you for watching.